So, in my opinion, the 2021 Utah Jazz are probably one of the worst number one seeds we've ever seen over the past, honestly, since I started watching basketball. Like the past decade, that's possibly one of the worst number one seeds I've ever seen in my life. The Boston Celtics with Isaiah Thomas are another good example. The Atlanta Hawks team that went like 60-22 when they had four like really bad all stars. Like they had two all stars averaging 13 points a game. They somehow were all stars. Like this is in the realm. The Utah Jazz this year are in the realm of being one of the worst number one seeds, not only of just this past decade, but one of the worst ones really ever. And I understand the accolades that all of these players garnered during the season. I mean, Jordan Clarkson was Sixth Man of the Year. Joe Ingles was in Sixth Man of the Year, the race as well. I think he was second or third. Rudy Gobert wins Defensive Player of the Year, which we'll get into how bad that is later. Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley are still a elite backcourt duo. And they have a lot of other guys like Bojan Bogdanovic, like Derek Favors, like Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench and just being excellent spark plug players during the season. But here's the problem is not only have Utah Jazz fans done this, but a lot of people who don't really watch the Utah Jazz play games up until the playoffs is this has been an issue. The issue that I'm going to talk about has been the issue with that franchise for the past 3 or 4 seasons, and that's their heavy reliance on Rudy Gobert, not only defensively, but also how should I say, the absolute impossibility for him to be an offensive threat. Another problem is that even though Rudy Gobert was Defensive Player of the Year this year, I think there's a conversation to be had, and this is kind of what I was going to get into earlier when I brought up his name, but he's probably the worst player I've ever seen in at least my lifetime win Defensive Player of the Year. You have to remember I've watched guys like Dwight Howard win Defensive Player of the Year, I believe 3 times in a row, something like that, 2 or 3 times at least. I've seen guys like Giannis win Defensive Player of the Year, Joakim Noah, Draymond Green. I've seen a lot of really good players in my lifetime win Defensive Player of the Year that not only just bring a defensive capability, but at least bring something offensively. Most of those guys at least had a playmaking asset that it seems like Rudy Gobert could never even dream of having. And in Draymond and Giannis's case, they had an ability to be a 15 to 20 point scorer when they were at their peak. And right now in Giannis's peak, he has the ability to not only score a lot, but be the main factor of an offense, which again is something that Rudy Gobert probably is never going to experience in the NBA. Is Rudy Gobert a bad player? No. Is he the worst guy to win an award this year? Yes. Is he probably the worst Defensive Player of the Year award winner I've seen in my lifetime? Yeah. But that doesn't mean he's a bad player. A lot of championship contending players or teams would love to have a player like Rudy Gobert on their team. And the worst part about it is to the contract. And this is something that has been an issue for Rudy Gobert the past couple of years, is the fact that he gets paid like he's a top-tier superstar, or at least a top-tier star, when he's really not. He's not in the same kind of category of the guys that get paid the same amount as him. And it's even worse when you look at guys who are paid less than him that are making a better impact than he does on the court. The worst part about it is that he limits what Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz can do as a championship contending team, because with Rudy Gobert, I believe he's the highest paid player on the team at like $27.5 million, something like that. Now, part of that is luck because they draft Donovan Mitchell late in the first round and they haven't had to pay him yet. They signed Mike Conley. That's an even bigger issue. I think Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert were top 2 paid salaries last year. However, getting back to the point is that Rudy Gobert just does not maximize the championship contendingness of this Utah Jazz team. And what's even worse is I don't know who's going to trade for him. Like, who's trading for this French dude that can block 2 or 3 shots a game and maybe dunk the ball 4 or 5 times a game? Like, I don't know who's trading for that. It has to be a really bad front office to trade for Rudy Gobert. Or it has to be someone who actually believes that he's the final piece. And I don't know who right now is thinking that. Maybe someone like Charlotte would be cool. That would be cool. They do need athleticism at the center position. Maybe somebody like I mean, like, that's it, though. I mean, Charlotte's really the only team that could use someone like Rudy Gobert. And I don't think the Utah Jazz want to use Rudy because, like I said, offensively, he's a zero. Defensively, he got picked on and kind of almost looked like he should have just given his Defensive Player of the Year award to Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid or someone who actually deserved it, or Giannis. So what I'm trying to culminate this all into is the Utah Jazz. If you're a Utah Jazz fan, you're about to watch a really weird offseason because I think they're really going to try to get rid of Rudy Gobert. And part of it has to do with the fact that they're going to have a new ownership with Dwayne Wade in the fold, a guy who we've linked to Donovan Mitchell many times. They've got a new ownership group, and they also have a guy in Donovan Mitchell who probably is pretty pissed off with this whole Rudy Gobert situation. And I'm not going to explain it more about what Rudy Gobert did last year or this year or his on the court or off the court shenanigans, we'll call them. I'm not going to dive deeper into that because I think everyone is aware of what Rudy Gobert has done. I think Donovan Mitchell is just kind of pissed off about this whole thing. And the only way really to save him from wanting out, there's a really good chance that Donovan Mitchell could just say tomorrow, hey, I don't care what you do with Rudy. I don't want to play here anymore because of the lack of a seeming to want to win a championship. Because obviously with Rudy Gobert in the fold, it's not like the Utah Jazz are really saying that they're making a move to win the championship. Now, with that being said, it's going to be hard for them to trade Rudy. And honestly, I would almost say it's like a 70-30 chance that either Rudy Gobert gets traded or Donovan Mitchell gets traded. I'd say it's 70% chance that Rudy gets traded, 30% chance that Don gets traded. Now, what would be even weirder is if neither of them got traded. And that would just be like, I think next year then, like halfway through the season, we'd be seeing some weird things with Donovan Mitchell. Some weird tweets, some weird court emotions, some weird reports out of Salt Lake City. I just think that the situation's gotten as weird as it can get with Rudy Gobert being a centerpiece on the team. And if they don't do anything about it soon in terms of getting his contract out from beneath their feet and actually proving that they want to be winning games, then I think Donovan Mitchell has a really good chance. If they decide to keep Rudy, I think there's a really good chance that they end up trading Donovan Mitchell during the offseason, because whether Utah Jazz fans want to admit it or not, Donovan Mitchell is a really, really good player. Every other 29 NBA teams would love to have Donovan Mitchell on their team, and I think there's a good 5 to 10 teams who would do anything that they could to get Donovan Mitchell on their team. I would look at somebody like the Knicks. I would look at somebody like the Miami Heat. I would look at somebody like even the Lakers. The Lakers are always desperate to get talent. The Clippers, the Suns would probably, if they lose Chris Paul, I would say the Suns would possibly be a big name to target Donovan Mitchell. I would say Milwaukee. I would say a lot of teams would love to get Donovan Mitchell. And honestly, there's going to be a lot more teams lining up the door for Donovan Mitchell than Rudy Gobert. And that's probably why there's even a chance both of them aren't there next year. I'd hate that if I was a Jazz fan. I'd hate to see it even as not a Jazz fan. But I think it's what they need is a good little reset button. Take 3 or 4 years. You got to think about it. The Utah Jazz have been competing in the Western Conference for the past 6 or 7 years before Donovan Mitchell got there. And now they've been competing. And right now it's time for them to just take a step back and say, let's reset, maybe keep 1 or 2 of these guys to build around, and figure out how we are going to actually maximize into a championship contending team. With all that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you at this point is much appreciated. If you have anything to tell me, leave a comment. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe. I don't know if I said that already. If I didn't, then make sure you hit subscribe again. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.